Ubuntu's changing as a company is starting to have reverberations through the Linux community, as one Linux computer manufacturer and their distribution is moving off of the Ubuntu core. Is this a trend we're going to see in other distributions, or is this just a one-off thing? Let's have a look. Thanks for checking out this video by switchedtolinux. If you like this type of content, subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. Leave us a like and a comment down below. As I said in the intro, some of the direction of Ubuntu is starting to rub some of the distributions based on Ubuntu a little bit of the wrong way. And one of the computer manufacturers for Linux with a partnering Linux distribution is switching off of Ubuntu, citing their direction with snaps and AI. Let's have a look. So this is Tuxedo OS. Of course, this is Tuxedo Computers, which is a German computer manufacturer, which produces Linux-based computers with the Tuxedo OS. So this is a plasma-based distribution, which until recently was based on Ubuntu because of its easy ability to work with most hardware and the fact it was stable and very common among Linux users. The thing is, though, is that Ubuntu has fallen out of a lot of favor. You'll still find a lot of references to it in internet searches and AI, mostly owing to the fact that it was undoubtedly and unquestionably the most popular Linux distribution for a long time, meaning a lot of solution guides, a lot of regular pop references to Linux would happen to be based on Ubuntu. I mean, heck, even those exposés about the Dread Pirate Roberts at, was that the Pirate Bay or Silk Road? That was a Silk Road, I'm sorry. He was even using Ubuntu for his stuff there as well. And the challenge here is that Ubuntu just kind of sticks around because of its old cultural relevance, even though most people have mostly switched off of it. Even watching Distro Watch, the Ubuntu has been falling and falling and falling. And now, as of last time I looked at DistroWatch, it's hanging around at number 10, almost to be offset by, small distributions some of us haven't even heard of. And a lot of this, the fact it's still up there is just because of the pop popularity, as new people are realizing Windows and Mac may not be for them in the long run. And they're saying, what do you switch to? Well, Ubuntu is the most common answer that we see. I mean, even still recently, I've seen several posts on X, like, Ubuntu, name me a better Linux distribution. Hannah Montana at this point, which comically I joked about on X a couple weeks ago or a couple days ago, I don't know, maybe a week or so ago, and now Hannah Montana Linux has a new release. And it might very well be better than Ubuntu. Right. But the thing is here is that Tuxedo has looked at the Ubuntu and its direction, and it's just like, it's becoming untenable. So as some distribution users of Tuxedo may have noticed that their plasma has been stuck on a 5X, even though, 6.5X, even though 6.7X is already available. A lot of this is just because some of the things Ubuntu has done has broken other systems that they're like, we're not really ready to move off on it. And so they are leaving Ubuntu for another Linux base for their entire operating system. In fact, they have not even released a concrete timeline for when Ubuntu 26.04 will be released. So now, as some speculation online has suggested, they are announcing Ubuntu is no longer the foundation. And instead, what they're going to be doing is using Debian Testing. They said they are not moving to Trixie when it is released. They are staying on Debian Testing. So Debian has several release cycles. First, they go into SID, where they're tested for a few weeks, and then they move into testing, and then they'll move over into the final release when that is out. And the thing is, though, is that the biggest problem with Debian is that if you're basing your distribution on Debian core, then that becomes dated fairly quickly. And the dating issue, the slower release cycles of the LTS for Ubuntu, is part of their problem. They don't want to be as fast as the point releases of Ubuntu, but they don't want to be as slow as the LTS, as the LTS starts to age, it becomes more difficult to support the packages as the dependencies have moved on. And so what they've done here is they've looked at Debian, would give them much of the same problem, albeit without the two factors that they are mentioning. Number one is the forced implementation of Snap. And number two is the non-transparent direction of AI Canonical has been taken, with a little bit of a tip of the hat to the fact that Canonical is a individual company and Debian is a global consortium. And so that really is what they're doing. So by staying on Debian testing, they can always be a rolling-based distribution similar to Arch, albeit in the Debian family. So they say here that as the LTS ages, backporting modern software becomes difficult, newer dependencies are unavailable, providing only outdated versions, and that becomes difficult to have software consistently working. So they also reference here KDE Neon has the same problem that Tuxedo has. So additional reasons relate to Canonical's strategic direction. It is becoming increasingly difficult to keep Snap packaging system out of the operating system, as Canonical is distributing more and more applications exclusively as Snap packages, while gradually pushing the traditional Deb packages into the background. Well, the latest versions of Ubuntu have made a little bit of that, bringing the Deb packages back a little bit. It is undeniable that they are pushing more and more and more Snap as a core feature. Makes me wonder, why has Linux Mint not announced a similar strategy to go, we just can't do Ubuntu anymore. They got too many snaps. The other factor they mention here is the AI roadmap announced by Mark Shuttleworth of Canonical remains insufficiently transparent. In addition, they believe that the security updates occasionally take longer to reach users than necessary. I can't speak to that last point, as I've seen Ubuntu push out security updates pretty quickly. Although Debian Testing probably does it quicker, to be honest. But they will be based on Debian Testing, Debian's development branch, where Debian 14 is currently taking shape as the next stable release. They talk here a little bit about how Debian is structured, which I've already mentioned. Debian Testing will remain our permanent foundation. We call this continuous Debian, allowing us to continue our hybrid release concept in a significantly more suitable base. They say the fast fetch here is already basing it, already says it's based on Debian, and I'm not sure if I've looked at Tuxedo OS on this channel before. So I'm in the process of downloading it, and I will try and get that video out sometime mid next week when I am not in the office. So I should be able to get it up, roll it up, have a look at it, and get that video out for you guys. So what are advantages of the new foundation? Canonical determines the fundamental aspects such as release cycles, strategic technology decisions, like the increasing focus on Snap and the future AI integration. As an Ubuntu derivative, we either have to adopt these decisions or invest in considerable effort in working around them. This, again, is what Linux Mint has done. They want nothing to do with snaps by default. They actively block snaps in their system. They provide a workaround if you want the snaps, but they are moving themselves, and Linux Mint is moving themselves in a direction to have to work around a lot of these decisions that Canonical is doing. And so it makes me wonder if, LMDE, which is Linux Mint's Debian edition, while it does have some of its challenges, and some of its challenges are because it bases itself on the current Debian release, that is one of the things Tuxedo is trying to avoid, because in our experience, LMDE is rock solid when it comes out, but it starts having some issues as it gets a little bit of aging. So maybe Linux Mint might consider a similar thing and move towards a Debian testing version, maybe switching the LMDE to a Debian testing instead of a Debian core for better stability and newer integration of packages. Maybe that's something they consider doing. I don't know. I just like Linux Mint, so I'm talking about that. But Tuxedo is looking at this and saying, hey, as Ubuntu keeps on doing these things that many in the Linux community don't want, maybe it's just easier for us if we just switch off of them altogether rather than working around it, because we don't want to adopt these things. So Debian is not controlled by a single company, but developed by a global community of contributors. And so what does this mean for the day-to-day? Ultimately, not much. If you're unaware of the changes going on in the back end, you may not even notice much of the difference. Now, there's not going to be a direct upgrade path from the old version to the new. They are going to be providing a detailed path how to transition, or they're going to give you a path if you want to stay on Ubuntu base. They're going to give you a path to go to Ubuntu, or you can just reinstall your entire operating system. Just take your files, whatever else. Now, the other thing that they're doing is they're making this change is they're switching their default file system to Btrfs and then using Snapper as a core system snapshot, which actually is a really good idea. Of course, Btrfs allows you to do the snapshots, and then every single time the package manager is going to run, it's going to take a snapshot of the system. So if there's an error, you can roll back to the previous known good configuration. And so that is all by Snapper. There are other file systems you can use, but of course, if you don't use those, then those end up getting turned off. So they do have a little bit more about that that system there. Ultimately, as by moving to Debian, Tuxedo OS gains substantial more independence while reducing the effort required to maintain up-to-date software. And that, I think, is the one thing that's hurting LMDE. So I don't know. Maybe you guys could think about looking at that. So as far as the implementation, they say before the final release, they'll publish a comprehensive migration guide explaining how to transfer your personal data. And if you want to remain on a Ubuntu-based platform, they'll provide a migration path to Ubuntu 26.04. And so there is one Linux distribution that is getting fed up with the things going on at Canonical and jumping ship. How long before many other distributions decide to jump ship as well? Because, frankly, a lot of the things that they're going are probably in contrary directions as most people switching to Linux. I don't know. Can I say most? I don't know. I think most people switching to Linux from one of the main operating systems are getting frustrated with the constant intrusion, and they want something more free and open. And Ubuntu pushing snaps and AI and other things that some people may not like is probably what's hurting them the most. And so this is actually a really good direction for Tuxedo OS, and I really can't wait to have a look at the distribution and see how it runs in my non-Tuxedo setup here. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about all that in the comments down below. Is this a great decision for them, or is this, who knows, who cares? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.